right after the school gets thoroughly trashed by terrorists. Our resident high-tier mob Cid is chilling in a temporary medical tent pitched in the smoking ruins of the academy. Suddenly, his self-proclaimed future wife, Princess Rose Oriana, burst through the entrance like an absolute maniac, screaming at the top of her lungs about some wounded guy with a back injury. Naturally, this unhinged volume level completely upsets the entire tent, prompting a short-haired doctor to bark at her to shut her trap. Shaken, Rose scans the crowded, dimly lit space, before her eyes lock onto a familiar mop of messy dark hair, and she immediately tackles him in a death grip of pure relief. "Thank goodness, I'm so happy to see you alive, Cid Kagenou," she wails. Cid, who basically shrugged off a fatal wound like a pro MMO player dodging a telegraph, deadpans that he miraculously avoided death through sheer luck. Rose, completely blind to his actual identity as a god-tier shadow broker, weeps and attributes his survival to his daily physical training. Cid just tilts his head and gives a non-committal shrug, but Rose is deeply lost in her own shoujo manga fantasy, grasping his hands and claiming his passionate feelings caused this miracle, and that his love has finally reached her. Cid, fighting off a yawn, weakly plays along with her main character energy, muttering about his strong will to live, smiling like she's already planning their wedding. Rose tucks him in and tells him to rest. As he drifts off to sleep, she strokes his hair, completely convinced he's a reliable, compassionate hero. Kneeling by his cot, she makes a silent, eternal vow to give him her heart. Fast forward a few days later, and the school is still a half-ruined mess under a sunny sky. Cid's two absolute clown-tier friends are busy coping about their performance during the raid. The blonde poser, Hyoro, dramatically clutches his head, boasting that keeping his immense latent power under control took everything he had. Beside him, the short-haired nerd, Jaga, nervously sweats and claims he was too busy analyzing enemy combat patterns to actually do anything useful. Hyoro keeps spinning his fantasy protagonist lies, claiming that unleashing his true powers would have literally destroyed the world. Jaga sighs, complaining that his only weakness is getting too hyper-focused. Cid just stands there, giving them a look of absolute unimpressed disgust, translating their gamer cope as them just pissing their pants in a corner. Before Cid can escape these two basement dwellers, a soft voice calls out, and he turns to see a cute blonde girl clutching her satchel. They walk over to a quiet, ruined corner where Sherry softly thanks him for saving her life during the raid. Keeping his mob character's stealth meter maxed out, Cid acts modest, claiming he didn't do much. Sherry gets intensely flustered, claiming he gave her the push she needed, before getting incredibly red and changing the subject. She dramatically announces she's studying abroad to accomplish some grand goal, since her foster dad got brutally executed by Shadow, which she thankfully doesn't know. She wants to expand her knowledge, asking if Cid will listen to her story when she returns. Cid plays the supportive background NPC, telling her good luck. Relieved, she smiles, and Cid casually asks what her grand mission is. She turns with a playful, secretive smile, calling it a secret, before waving goodbye as she runs off. Cid waves back, muttering that he won't slack off either. As her cape billows in the wind, she looks back with a hopeful smile, promising they shall meet again. Meanwhile, far away from school drama, the evening settles over a bustling town where stone buildings cast long shadows under a darkening sky. Inside a dimly lit room, Alpha is sitting elegantly on a window ledge, looking incredibly stylish in her form-fitting Shadow Garden gear, holding a piece of paper and noting that the kingdom doesn't waste any time. She turns the document toward her dark-haired elf subordinate, who gasps in sheer shock at the wanted poster. Alpha remains completely unbothered, chuckling that the flyers are actually pretty well made. She reads off the list of fabricated crimes, laughing at how Shadow is now a wanted state enemy accused of mass murder, arson, and robbery. The elf subordinate is absolutely fuming on behalf of her lord, gesturing wildly and demanding they take action to clear his name. Alpha's mind briefly drifts back to the night of the fire, recalling the blazing flames and the cult members who tried to drag their name through the dirt. Snapping back to reality, she taps her shoe and declares that they will simply shoulder all the world's sins, just like their master intended. She stands up with dramatic flair, stating that nothing changes and they will continue their mission. The subordinate is instantly starstruck by this profound, absolute masterclass in edginess, whispering that these are words to live by. Alpha quietly looks away, remembering how she once thought the Diabolos cult was pure evil and that they were the side of justice. But she realizes Shadow's resolve is on a whole different level, and they must live up to it. Turning back, she orders her to gather the 7 shades for a briefing. The subordinate bows deeply, eager to comply, while outside a carriage races through the night toward Lindwurm. Under the cover of a pitch-black night, Cid is mentally recapping his absolute win of a terrorist arc. He managed to dodge all suspicion by playing the lucky survivor card, and with the school burned to a crisp, he has a sweet vacation to focus on his mob-few training. Or at least, that was the plan until a luxury carriage started rattling down a bumpy dirt road. Cid is currently trapped inside the cabin, undergoing a psychological torture session because Princess Rose is sitting right across from him. She leans forward, grabbing his hand, and starts rambling about how their meeting is a blessing of fate. She closes her eyes, dramatically sighing that their future path will be incredibly arduous. Cid stares at her with completely dead, half-lidded eyes, begging her internally to shut up about fate. The only reason he's even traveling is because Alpha sent him a cryptic, super-secret letter telling him to go to the Holy Land of Lindwurm. Lindwurm is basically the Vatican of this world, currently hosting a massive event called the Goddess Trial. Cid could have easily broken the sound barrier by serious dashing there at 1,200 kilometers in a single evening, but because he's committed to the mob lifestyle, he chose a slow carriage, only to get hijacked by Rose waiting at him. Now, he has to endure her constant religious rambling, making him desperately regret not just running there at supersonic speeds. Rose suddenly changes the subject, noting that something felt off about the school incident. Cid plays along, asking what she means. Rose explains that the black-clad terrorists and the real Shadow fought with completely different combat styles, meaning they belong to different factions. She warns Cid to be careful, as the kingdom's knights have no clue what they're doing. Cid gives her a low-effort grunt of agreement. Seeing her get anxious, Cid shrugs and tells her she's probably overthinking it. Rose sighs with relief, and as they roll across a stone bridge, Cid looks out the window, glad they finally arrived. Stepping out onto the right side of the busy street, Cid takes in the grand, historic sights of Lindwurm. The town is absolutely packed with lively NPCs, from traveling merchants to chattering townsfolk, while the mouth-watering scent of fresh steak and warm bread wafts from food stalls. Near a beautiful, bubbling fountain, Cid stretches, muttering to Rose about how energetic the place is. Rose beams, suggesting they go sightseeing, but Cid immediately freezes, spotting a souvenir stand. He stares in sheer, unadulterated disbelief at a display of tacky dragon claw keychains holding swords, realizing that even fantasy worlds have the exact same trashy tourist trap merchandise as Japan. Rose, thinking he's just a cute boy, mentions that these keychains are super popular with guys. Cid keeps his mob on, smiling and agreeing they look cool, while picking one up. Rose explains the lore, saying the right hand represents the demon, Diabolos, clutching the sword of the hero Olivier. After a quick mental image of the epic ancient battle where Olivier severed the beast's arm, Rose points to the ruins on the steep mountain where the hand is supposedly sealed. Cid, completely ignoring the lore but loving the edgy aesthetic, immediately decides to buy it. Rose blushes, giggling that it's just a fairy tale anyway. Suddenly, a massive crowd erupts in excitement. Rose gasps, pointing to a promotional banner for a book signing event by the famous author Natsume. She grabs Cid's sleeve and drags him into the massive queue, gushing about how she's a massive fan. Cid digs his heels in, completely refusing to stand in line. Rose, however, goes full fangirl, listing Natsume's masterpieces like Romeo and Juliet, Cinderella, and Little Red Riding Hood. She continues chanting titles like I Am a Cat, Spider-Man, and Spirited Away, which she calls Glopped Away. Cid freezes in absolute horror, sweating profusely as he screams internally about a massive copyright lawsuit. At the front of the line, a hooded author calls for the next person, and Cid genuinely panics, wondering if another reincarnated Earthling is here. But when they reach the table, the author looks up with a bubbly smile, and Cid's existential dread instantly sours into pure irritation when he recognizes his subordinate, Beta. Glaring at her with a deadpan face, he mutters, "The fuck are you doing?" Beta almost chokes on her spit but quickly recovers, giving him a sparkling dramatic smile and beckoning him closer. Cid crosses his arms, repeating his proskening, before asking if her books are at least selling well. Beta demurely replies that she's making bank under her pen name while securing funds and intelligence for Shadow Garden. Cid immediately reels in silent indignation, realizing Beta has been plagiarizing all the bedtime stories he told her when they were kids, and he silently questions if money is all she cares about. Unaware of his mental breakdown, Beta hands him a signed copy, which Cid accepts while internally crying over her greed. Leaning closer, Beta whispers in her best spy movie voice that she was invited as a guest of honor to gather intelligence. Cid, completely checked out, just grunts. Beta adjusts her glasses, whispering that she hid the operation details inside the book, entirely ignoring the nearby waitress who has no idea a high-stakes spy briefing is happening. Realizing Beta is just role-playing a cool secret agent, Cid's anger vanishes, and he happily forgives her for the plagiarism. Meanwhile, Rose clutches her book, completely starry-eyed over Natsume's outstanding creativity. She gushes about how Natsume writes across multiple genres like a genius, while Cid looks on, thinking about how hilariously ironic her praise is. Opening the book, Cid's eyes widen as he sees the pages are covered in strange, swirling, ancient runes. Rose peeks over, shocked that Natsume wrote in runes. Cid nods, but Rose tilts her head, admitting she can't read cursive ancient runes. She asks Cid why Natsume would sign her book like this. Cid proudly raises a finger and declares with absolute conviction, "Hella cool." Rose's jaw drops, and as they walk away, she sweat drops, muttering about how weird boys are. Later, Rose leads Cid to a massive, luxurious hotel suite, explaining that cheap rooms are impossible to find. Cid rubs his neck, acting humble, but Rose tells him there's no need for restraint between them. She says she has to go meet the local higher-ups, as a guest of honor, telling him to relax and order room service. Cid waves goodbye, and the second the door shuts, he faceplants onto the plush mattress, celebrating the joy of leeching off the rich. Meanwhile, night falls over Lindwurm, and out on a cobblestone street, a hot-headed girl with long twin tails complains about her grueling 4-day carriage ride. Striking a dramatic pose, she decides to head straight for the hot springs to relieve her fatigue.
The video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Like the video if you're ready for the next part.